In this lecture, we'll study the structure, life cycle, ecological significance, classification, adaptation, and evolutionary importance of pteridophytes. So you all have seen this chart before, where we look at the classification of kingdom Plantae based on the presence of seeds or absence of seeds. So in the seedless plants, we have studied alga and bryophytes, and today we are studying pteridophytes, which are a bit evolved from bryophytes because they have roots, shoots, and leaves. Pteridophytes are vascular plants, unlike bryophytes. They reproduce via spores, not via seeds or flowers as you see in common plants around you. Bryophytes do not have vascular system, but pteridophytes have xylem and phloem, which are the vascular tissues. Pteridophytes also have true roots, stem, and leaves, unlike bryophytes. These plants are commonly found in moist and shady habitats. Common examples of pteridophytes are ferns, horsetails, club mosses, and whisk ferns. Let's look at the structure of pteridophytes. They have true roots, which anchor the plant and absorb water and nutrients from the soil below. They can have two kinds of stem, rhizome, which is the underground stem for absorbing the nutrients, and the aerial stem, which is above the ground, and they sometimes contain silica. The leaves of pteridophytes are called fronds. They are large and divided structure, as you can see in ferns, and are adapted for the process of photosynthesis and bearing sporangia for the production of spores. Pteridophytes have vascular tissue, which is xylem for the transportation of water and phloem for the transportation of sugar and other nutrients. Sporangia are the structures where spores are produced. They are usually located on the underside of the leaf. The leaf is also called frond in ferns, and they are sometimes present in the clusters called sori. The sporangia may be protected by a covering called indusium. Let's look at the evolutionary history of pteridophytes. Pteridophytes are believed to have evolved 400 million years ago, and they were the earliest vascular plants. They have evolved from non-vascular plants called bryophytes, and this adaptation helps in surviving on land because vasculature is important for transportation of water from the soil to the different parts of the plant. Because of being vascular, they can attain taller heights because now they have the distribution system in them. Pteridophytes thrive best in swamp forests, and they end up forming coal deposits. Pteridophytes are the link between seedless plants, which are all this side, and seed plants, which are higher in the evolutionary tree. Pteridophytes have heterospory. That means they produce two different kinds of spores, which can be a microspore and a megaspore. Let's look at the classification of Pteridophyta. The first division is called Xylophyta, which is a primitive form that does not have true roots or leaves. Then there are Lycophyta, which are small plants with true roots and simple leaves. Then we have Sphenophyta, which have jointed stems with silica deposited in them, and the sporangia are formed in a cone-like structure called the strobili. Pterophyta or fern forms the largest division under Pteridophyta. Let's have a quick look at the Coelopsida. They are the primitive vascular plants that lack true roots and leaves. They can perform the process of photosynthesis and nutrient absorption through their green stems. They also have rhizoids, which are the root-like structures that helps them in anchorage but do not really absorb any water. The spores are produced in the small sporangia which are present at the stem nodes. The common example of this division are Coleotta and Mesopteris. These plants usually grow as epiphytes, that means they grow on other tall and larger trees. Now let's have a quick overview of Lycopsida. Lycopsida are small plants with true root, stem and needle-like leaves. They have well-developed vasculature that allow for efficient transportation of water and nutrients. Spores are produced in cone-like structures called strobili, which are present at the stem tip or the leaf axil. They may display heterospory, which means they can produce two kinds of spores, the microspore and the megaspore. The common example of this division are Lycopodium and Slegionella. Now let's have an overview of Sphenopsida, which includes horsetails. These plants have jointed stems which are hollow and segmented, and they may have silica deposit in them which gives them a rough appearance. They have small scale-like leaves which are arranged in whorls like you can see here. The spores are produced in a structure which looks like a cone and is called strobili. The main adaptation of these plants is the deposition of silica, which prevents them from being eaten up by the herbivorous animals. Common example of the plant in this division are Equisteum. Now let's have a quick overview of Pteropsida. Pteropsida have the structure called fronds, which are large divided leaves that are coiled during the early phases of their development, as you can see here. They have well developed vasculature. The spores are produced in sporangia, which are present on the underside of these large fronds. These plants also display alteration of generation, with sporophyte being the dominant phase of their life cycle, unlike bryophytes which have gametophyte as the dominant phase of their life cycle. These plants are present in diverse habitats all around the world. The common example of this division are Pteridium, Dryoteris, and Adiantum. Now let's have an overview of the life cycle of Pteridophytes. Pteridophytes also have alteration of generation that alternates between the dominant diploid sporophyte phase and the less dominant and smaller haploid gametophyte phase. The sporophyte is the main body of the plant with roots, stems, and leaves, and they produce spores. The spores are dispersed with the help of wind and they germinate to form gametophytes under favorable conditions. The gametophytes are small, heart-shaped prothallus with male and female organ called antheridia and archegonia respectively. The sperm has to swim to the egg for fertilization in moist conditions. The fertilized egg then forms zygote, which grows up to form the sporophyte. Sporophyte is the diploid structure which is the main stage of Pteridophyta, and the gametophyte phase is dominant in Bryophyta, as we have learned before. The sporophytes have shoot system, root system, and leaves, and they have well-developed vasculature. They produce spores by the process of meiosis. These spores grow on to form the gametophytes, which is a haploid structure. The spores are produced in sporangia, which are present on the underside of these leaf structures called fronds. The sporangia protects the spores, and the vasculature gives the opportunity to these plants to survive in the terrestrial adaptation. Wind is usually required for the dispersal of spores, which end up forming the gametophytes. The gametophytes in Pteridophyta form the prothallus. They are small, free-living, photosynthetic structures, and they are haploid in their chromosome number. The thallus is heart-shaped, thin, and can absorb nutrients and moisture from its environment. They have structures called antheridia and archegonia for the production of sperm and egg respectively. When there are moist conditions, the sperm can swim to the egg, leading to fertilization. Gametophytes are usually short-lived structures that are found in the shady areas because they do not have vasculature of their own. The sporophyte is the main structure of pteridophytes, and the sporophytes are formed by the fertilization of these gametes and growing up of the zygote. Now let's look at some key features of spore production and dispersal. The sporophytes produce spores through the process of meiosis. So sporophytes are diploid and spores are haploid. The spores are produced in the structure called sporangia, which are present on the underside of the frond or leaves. The sporangia are sometimes protected by indusium. So the pteridophytes can form same type of spore in a condition called homospory, or two different kinds of spores in the process of heterospory. The spores are usually light in weight and they are dispersed through wind. The spores germinate to form gametophyte, which is a haploid structure in the life cycle of pteridophytes. Because the spores can fly away and disperse, this increases their diversity and their adaptability to newer environments. Now let's look at the adaptations of pteridophytes for terrestrial life. The most important adaptation is that they have well-developed vascular system with the presence of xylem and phloem. They have true roots which help them provide anchorage and also aids in absorbing nutrients and water from the substrate. They have large leaves which maximizes their capacity to perform photosynthesis. They have protective structures like sporangia in which the spores are protected from the outer dry conditions. They have waxy cuticles on them to reduce the loss of water. They have heterospermy in which they produce two different kinds of spores, leading to the seed evolution. The dominant phase of their life cycle is the sporophyte, and the spore production has improved their resilience to different habitats. Pteridophytes perform several key roles in our ecosystem. They help in formation of soil. They also prevent erosion by holding the soil tightly with their roots. They provide microenvironment to small organisms. They help in recycling the nutrients. They sequester environmental carbon dioxide and perform photosynthesis to give out oxygen. They are the indicator organisms for keeping a check or monitoring the health of the environment and the quality of air and air pollution. Because their spores can be dispersed, they are the pioneer for getting into the new habitats and growing in disturbed soils. Economically, pteridophytes are widely used as ornamental plants, and they are used as indoor plants as well. Pteridophytes such as Equisteum can be used as a diuretic or anti-inflammatory medicine. Ferns are also used for wounds and respiratory issues. They are used as bioindicators to monitor the quality of air pollution. Pteridophytes also contribute to formation of coal, thus producing the fuel. These plants are also extensively used in crafts, rituals, and decoration. Let's look at the comparison between pteridophytes and bryophytes. Pteridophytes have xylem and phloem, which is why they have developed vascular system, which is absent in bryophytes. The dominant phase of their life cycle is sporophyte, whereas in bryophytes the dominant phase is the gametophytes. Pteridophytes have true root, stem, and leaves, which are lacking in the bryophytes. The spores are produced in well-developed structure called sporangia in pteridophytes, which have a protective mechanism. Pteridophytes are also better adapted to terrestrial life and are present in more diverse habitats. And pteridophytes are one step closer to the more complex seed plants in the evolutionary tree. Let's look at the comparison of homospory and heterospory. Homospory is the process in which one kind of spore is produced, and in heterospory two kinds of spores which are distinguishable from each other are produced. These are microspores and megaspores. So the same kind of spore will end up forming a gametophyte, which is bisexual, that will produce both the kinds of gametes. But microspores and megaspores end up forming the male and female gametophyte, which will produce the different kinds of gametes. The homospory is a more primitive form of reproductive strategy, and heterospory is more evolved. You can understand this process by taking the example of human beings. In human beings, the male gametes and female gametes are produced by male and female who look very distinguishable from each other. Now let's summarize what we have studied till now. Pteridophytes have vascular system. In them, the dominant phase of their life cycle is sporophyte. They have true roots, stem, and leaves. They also display alternation of generation, and their gametophyte is independent, but they form the prothallus and is not a very long phase of their life cycle. They are well adapted for the terrestrial life with the presence of vasculature. Pteridophytes are important in stabilizing the soil, for carbon cycle, and for creating new habitats. They are extensively used in landscaping, medicine, and in environment monitoring. They are an important bridge between non-vascular plants and the seed-bearing plants, which we'll study in the coming lecture.